Happy iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, 13 Pro, and 13 Pro Max Day. I guess just happy iPhone Day, everybody. Today is launch day of the newest phones, as well as the iPad mini. And it is an exciting day for all to enjoy their new phones. But unfortunately, when we're recording this, we're still a couple of days away. So Matt and I are still sort of salivating over the videos and all the hands-on content because we cannot wait to get the new devices in our hands. And we will talk about a lot of different things today, including our first impressions of these devices and some stuff on iOS 15, which launched earlier this week. But before we do that, I want to point out that if you guys are listening to this podcast, you can also watch us on YouTube. If video podcasts are more your thing, you can hit the link in the show notes in the description for this podcast and check out the Apple Circle YouTube channel. We've got clips, we've got full-length episodes. We appreciate all of you who have subscribed so far, and hopefully we can provide you some pretty cool content, as well as for another time here, continue to ping our little Apple Circle hotline. If you have questions, comments, you have a question or you want answered or feedback to an episode, we would love to hear from you. You can call us or text us at our lovely Google Voice number, which is 949-354-3508. And we have a comment from someone, which we will get to in just 1 second. But first, Matt, how you doing this week? Happy iPhone week, iOS 15, iPad OS. How you liking everything?
Lots of good
far?
stuff. It's always tough, that time between the Apple events and when the products actually come out. So there's so much speculation, the embargoes drop. There's just so much to get excited about, but also so much that we're just waiting to happen. But like you said, we've got all the software and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm ready for these new phones. I'm excited about this new software. But let's get in. We have a long question this week, and I think it's mainly a follow-up to something we talked about last week or a few weeks ago. I can't remember when. These episodes all blend together at a certain point, but it's about the Apple Watch. So why don't you run us through the question and what the whole situation is here?
I do have to say, Matt, before we get into this, both of us realized last Friday as we woke from our slumber to pre-order the phones that we spent a good time or a good chunk rather of the last episode of the podcast talking about pre-order strategies and what to do and this and that. And we record these podcasts, by the way, a little behind the scenes on Wednesday. So we kind of have some time to edit and stuff like that. And we talked about the strategy and what to do. And we realized that the episode we recorded wouldn't go out until after pre-orders went live later that day on Friday. So how do we both miss that? That was funny.
Yeah. I don't know how we... Yeah, one of us missing it, that's possible. I miss things all the time. But both of us missing it, I don't know how we did that. But the strategies, all the tips are still good. Apple's going to be releasing new products, so keep that stuff in mind for the next time they do it. And I guess hopefully you guys got your iPhones. If you wanted iPhones, hopefully you guys know the tips, or we're just lucky enough to get one. The pre-order process this year was actually pretty smooth. They did a lot of good things behind the scenes to let you get ready for the pre-orders, so you just jump in, make that purchase. Although pretty quickly, as it usually happens, it started to slip into the October range, into farther down the line. But yeah, total slip on our part, but still good tips. But yeah, let's get into this question. Explain the Apple Watch Series 7.
So we have an unnamed commenter here who sent us a great text to our Apple Circle hotline, kind of talked about he's getting a 9th gen iPad and how it works kind of in his workflow. And the one thing that he also mentioned as well, he or she, was that they believe, like me, that the Apple Watch Series 7 that Apple introduced is not the watch that they originally intended to reveal to us, that there was another design, supposedly sort of that squared-off, boxy edge design, very similar to the iPads and the iPhones, was going to be here with the Series 7. And we talked about this last week, but I got to say, Matt, the more and more I think about this, the more I just don't think that the Series 7 that we got is at all significant. It at all ushers in this new design. And there has been some really interesting videos from a couple different YouTube channels. John Prosser in particular, he did a nice deep dive sort of follow-up into his theories of what happened. And he points to some evidence regarding the timeline of delays and kind of looking at the keynote and kind of trying to see if Apple sort of maybe one way or another accidentally showed us that they had to go back and re-edit that keynote because the Series 7 had changed. And one of the examples that he points out, and, you know, not his fault, but there's not a whole lot to show, but he shows that the transition during the event from iPad to Apple Watch is very basic. It's just like a cut from Tim Cook in one angle of the stage and then Tim Cook at the other. There is no fancy transition. There's no camera move.
Interesting.
It's just one move. And Apple doesn't always do a crazy transition between different products, so I don't know if that's enough on its own. But to me, looking at the timeline of delays and it's just something just doesn't sit right with me about the Series 7. I just do not think that this is worthy of a new design language and sort of, again, what Jeff Williams called like the next generation of the Apple Watch. I agree with this unnamed messenger here and the other theories that I think that the Series 7 that we got was not what we were supposed to get from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that side of the story. The question I have is, okay, let's say they did run into issues. They had to rework everything. They had to create the Series 7 that we actually saw on stage. How long did they know they had to do that? Because, sure, let's say they re-edited the keynote and everything. They still had all the videos. They still had all the actors. They still had all the demos. Is it like that only took them 3 days, or did they know like a few months in advance? You know, how, because I know we got rumors that the Series 7 was going to be delayed, which obviously it is delayed. But, you know, how long did they know that to, I don't know. It's like the pieces are like half there. I want to know all the pieces connecting.
That's an excellent question, too, because we know that Apple typically works pretty far ahead on things and that they usually plan things out in advance. And I guess right now the working theory that I have heard is that when we heard of those production issues sort of mid-August, late August, that the theory is that around then is when they sort of rework things. And I will say that I'm not giving full credit to this theory. You got to check out John Prosser's video on Front Page Tech. He kind of goes into more of the specifics. If you look at the Apple Watch page, for example, on the Apple website, he says that the display being flat shows that that was the original display that they sort of Frankensteined into this case. And that's where I kind of get a little stuck on this too. On one hand, I understand Apple having to rework things, but could they really rework and pull a miracle here with the new Series 7 in like 3 or 4 weeks, if that? Because I think someone had pointed out that the AR model created of the Series 7 that is on the Apple website was created, like they looked at like the build date, was like sometime late August. So for them to pull this Hail Mary and to rework the whole Apple Watch, they'd have to do it. Well, maybe I take that back. What we saw was not a real Apple Watch. It was renders. So we also got a date coming later this fall for the release. So maybe they did have time to rework production. They really just needed to rework the keynote and what they were going to show, that they needed to sort of come up with something really quick to show in the keynote, and then they could sort of figure it out and then launch it later this fall. It seems so weird to me. It seems there's too many coincidences here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that there's something fishy going on here. But, well, I guess my question is, how big of an issue was the quote-unquote original Series 7, the boxy design, that they had to completely scrap it? Because, you know, what kind of issues are they having here? Like, if they're using very similar components on the inside, like that screen, like the S7, even though the S7 is basically the same chip, but like, you know, all the inside stuff that they were going to put into that Series 7 that they had to Frankenstein into this new case. So was it really just the case that's the issue? Like,
that's another great question.
And how big? Like, Apple of all companies should be able to figure that out, right? Like, is it really easier to create a whole different watch, which still, like we've said last time, it still does have a new design, whether, you know, it looks the same, but it is a new case with a new front glass, with a new screen. So they have to create new machines and new tooling to actually create those. Is it really easier to do that than to just fix the one or create the one that apparently, you know, again, quotes, that they've been working on? I don't know. It's just, I don't know if we're ever going to know, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know why at that point, if they were having issues, if it was already going to be delayed till later this fall anyways, why not just stick with that design, show it off, and then just ship it later? Because now they're already kind of shipping things later anyways, and it's supposedly a different design. So there's a lot of good questions here on what happened and what went so catastrophically wrong that they had to turn things on a dime at the last minute. That just doesn't make sense to me. And again, we know Apple plans, they're very strategic. How could they miss something so critical in the production process that would cause things to go this catastrophically wrong? That also doesn't make sense to me. So you're sort of stuck in the middle here. Like, what really happened? We probably won't ever know.
Yeah, I guess the other way to look at this, or like to make it seem a little bit more possible, is that I'm sure Apple has multiple versions of these products in development at the same time. Like, I mean, maybe this isn't true, but I have to suspect that when they're developing this brand new, they know it's brand new. They have this new version of the Apple Watch. There's probably another team working on the backup. Like, we're gonna try to make this work, but it might not work, so we'll make this one in the back end as well. Maybe the delay here is that they tried to make the squared off version work. They couldn't do it. So the delay now is that they're bringing this one out and they have to retool all their machines to make this slightly different case because they know they can do this one. It's not as exciting. It doesn't have as many new features, but they know they can do it. The new one, maybe it just didn't work. Maybe they're like, okay, we'll just push that till next year. We'll make it work by then. You know, I can see that happening. It's more just, it's the fact that it came down to the wire if this is what happened. The fact that it was weeks before that they had to scrap this and do reshoots. Because, yeah, you're right. It's like mid-August. The event was on the 14th, right? So that is weeks. I mean, you're not developing a new watch in weeks. That's just not happening. Even if it's just renders, like you have to have the real product for a company like Apple, at least. They're not going to show you something on stage that is absolutely completely different when it actually comes out, you know? So they know it's going to work. Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, though, and we're never going to know. I don't know.
I remember AirPower. I don't know. They said they could do pretty good renders. Yeah.
Yeah, but that just never came out.
Yeah.
You know, like it would be one thing if AirPower, they showed like all these things and then suddenly it was like a pad that was 3 times the size and like with cooling fans and stuff. That's one thing. But like
one day,
have they ever actually released a product that is completely different than what they showed on stage? Even the iPhone, which we know, the original iPhone, we know was a complete mess. Like it did not work when they showed it on stage. They had to do that magic path. Remember, like he had to go to this step and then he had to go to this step. And if he didn't, there was a very real chance that the phone was going to crash. So that phone did not work. But when we actually got the real thing, it looked exactly the same. Like they're pretty good about releasing the products that they actually talk about.
One day there's going to be like a Reddit thread or like some AMA or some tell-all, and it's going to come out like 10 years from now. Oh yeah, you know, remember with the Series 7, all those theories, what was true? One day we'll get the truth, but for now, we're gonna get a sit down with Jeff Williams. He's gonna be like, "Oh, let me tell you about that Apple Watch Series 7." See, I don't know.
So I'm excited for all that.
I wonder if they'd ever admit to it. I wonder if in 10 years from now, when Tim Cook writes his memoir, he does his biography by Walter Isaacson, who comes and interviews him, will there be a little tidbit in there on like production issues with the Series 7? Probably not, but it's fun to think about. Speaking of kind of Tim Cook and Apple and another big week, besides iPhones launching on Friday, we also got the release of iOS 15, iPadOS 15, watchOS 8, and we're live. So, Matt, 2 questions for you is, 1, did you update your devices? And 2, did you spend any time with the public betas, or did you go into this on launch day as a regular, quote-unquote, consumer?
So, 1, yes, I did update all my devices. 2, this was the first year I can think of since I've had iPhones, which I've had all the iPhones. So I think this is the first year I can think of where I did not update to the beta. I did update on a different phone a little ways down the line. Like it was only a few months ago that I did that. But yeah, this is the first year I didn't update to the beta, and really it's because there was nothing in that beta that really excited me, like at all. This was minor update of minor updates. I will say though, now that I'm running it, I'm pretty happy with it. There's a few things I like, there's a few things I don't like, but mostly it's all the same. What about you? Did you update to the beta? Did you update to the real live one?
Yeah, same as you. I did not go into the beta at all. I just didn't feel the need to jump into it just because there wasn't really anything I was super excited about. And so I got to experience all the new 15s on all the devices as they launched. And like you, it's fine. For me, like the kind of top, like couple coolest things, spatial audio in like apps like Spotify and stuff. That's just super cool. I love seeing more and more apps support spatial audio, and like they pop up in like the most random apps, and it's really cool. I love having that tech, and that's really cool to see. Have yet to use sort of the focus mode. I love the way the notifications come in now. They're a lot more I like the way they look, the rounded kind of design, and also they're like more contextually aware. I don't know if that's the right word, but like for Slack, for example, before you'd get a Slack notification, it would just say like this person posted in this room, but now with Slack on the iPhone and iPhone OS 15 or iOS 15 rather, you get like little pictures of who talked and who's in the conversation. It's like little stuff like that that improve with notifications that I liked a lot. And I mean, yeah, so far so good. I haven't really done a deep dive into anything in particular. I'm like looking at my phone here on my desk. I'm like, is there anything here? Notifications are nice. I love the new weather app, but I was using Dark Sky before, so
that's what I was going to say.
Crazy, but it's nice.
I was going to say weather's my
you?
favorite one, I think.
And besides weather,
let me grab my phone because I am not sure. Like we said, the updates here are not that big. Yeah, weather is probably my favorite new app and new thing. The focus modes I haven't used. I tried to set it up, and I was like, I'm not going to use this. It's not the type of. That's not how I use my phone. I'm not going to be using this. One issue that has been popping up all over the internet, and there's people that go back and forth. Do you like it? Do you hate it? The new Safari. Do you like the bar on the bottom? Now, yes, you can switch it, which I don't think a lot of people know, but do you like how they have it set up by default?
I am trying to get used to it. I understand the theory of having that bar near your thumbs, and it's easy to sort of swipe in between the different pages. I don't have a solid opinion on it yet, but I'm trying to get used to it. So far, I don't hate it, but I'm so glad that there's a way to go back and revert to the old style. So we'll see. But so far, I don't mind it all that much. What about you?
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's just I cannot get used to it. Granted, it's only been a few days, but like every time I go to search for something, I'm like swiping down because I'm like, where's the bar? Like, get the bar down. And then I'm like, oh, it's at the bottom. I just keep forgetting. I'm tempted to just switch it to the, usual way that it was, but I kind of want to give it a shot and see if I can get used to it because like I agree, there is some benefit to that, especially with these huge phones these days. Like having it at the bottom is actually nicer. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. Like I said, the focus modes are interesting. It's just not something I'm going to use. What about iPad OS 15? You have the iPad. Have you installed it there?
I have, and the first thing I noticed, which was really weird, I don't know if this happened to you, but I got a bunch of random widgets that just showed up on my home screen that I never asked for, then had to go in and delete, which was kind of annoying. So that was weird. And then I also toggled the quick note functionality accidentally at the gym, and then had to spend 30 seconds trying to get rid of it. Some of the iPad OS gestures I just don't understand and don't like, but maybe that's just me. But again, it is what it is. I don't know. The whole 15 OS updates have been very incremental. This sort of really has been a very incremental year. And to Apple's credit, this has been a very weird year in 2020 and 2021, a lot of working from home. Exactly. So maybe they couldn't get a lot of things launched as they wanted to on the timetable they wanted to. But with the phones and with the OS updates, everything is very sort of status quo. Some nice little things there, but I have yet to notice anything that makes me go, wow, this is really cool. I like being able to sort of put widgets wherever I want on the home screen. That is nice. I like the left behind feature. I had the first opportunity to use that the other day where I left my keys in the car, and as I walked away, I got a little notification that says, hey, your keys are not with you. That's kind of cool. But there's just nothing that stands out to me about, wow, this is great. Yes, I think you should update, and obviously things will be added over time. SharePlay is hopefully coming soon. But as of right now, it's a nice update, nice to have these features, but nothing blowing me away right out of the gate.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Although I will say I'm actually more excited and more interested in iPad OS 15. Yeah, I like being able to put widgets anywhere, and I like the bigger widget also. I'm using that for calendar right now, and it's nice to have that. And you can I feel like you can rearrange them a little bit better than you can on the iPhone just because there's more space. So I'm happy with that. The other thing that I really like about the iPad is actually Safari. As much as I am questionable about it on the iPhone, on the iPad, I love the new Safari. It looks very much more desktop-like. There's not really that many more features, but it's just the way it looks. I like the design a lot better. Makes it feel more like I'm using a Mac. Plus, there are extensions now, although I haven't tried any of them. I gotta look into that and see if there's any good extensions.
I'm embarrassed to say
it's
that
nice that.
Sorry, I'm embarrassed to say that I hadn't even opened Safari, and I'm opening it for the first time on the iPad. Wow, this is nice. It does look like a Mac.
Yeah, it looks much more desktop-like, especially when you compare it to macOS Monterey. The new Safari there, they almost look identical at this point. So I'm happy with that. We didn't get any of the, iPad Pro app things that we were expecting at WWDC. So it's like a nice little intermedium before hopefully we actually get that stuff. Although we keep saying that every year that we're going to get new features on the iPad that's going to make it more like a Mac. I don't know at this point. I'm kind of giving up hope.
I feel like this was the year that was supposed to happen, and now you have these crazy powerful M1 equipped iPad Pros. And I guess next year, maybe that's what we've been saying for so many years. It's not a processing power problem. It's not a
No,
hardware
definitely
problem.
not.
It's just some kind of weird. And I don't even think it's a software problem. It's just Apple just needs to open it up, because we know that Final Cut Pro runs on the M1 chips on the Mac. Why wouldn't it run on the iPad? I think it's got to be something with the UI, with the touch interface.
I think it's a
that
UI
there's
thing, yeah.
something there.
Yeah, I think they want to be able, like, I totally understand. If you're going to be selling the iPad as the iPad, and then, yeah, sure, you could add the Magic Keyboard, you could add the accessories, but that doesn't come with the iPad. So the software that it runs has to work with touch. So I understand them wanting to convert Final Cut into a touch, or at least able to work with touch. So, yeah, sure. But if they're doing this, and as many years as we've been asking for it, they've got to be working on this for a long time now, right? Like, they don't have to work on the back end as much. It's just like the interface layer, I would think. Like, plus, I mean, there is other things like storage, external media. But again, it's all stuff that, like, we've been asking for this for years. Apple knows is a thing. Like, they do it on the Mac. I don't know.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the imminent launch of new devices. We've got the iPhone 13 series. We've got the iPad mini. Again, we're recording this on Wednesday. The embargoes have now dropped on all the iPhone 13 models and the iPad mini. Matt, initial thoughts on this, and was there anything that was shown off now, sort of quote unquote, in real life and not in an Apple keynote, that surprised you, something that made you change your opinion, more exciting? Any initial thoughts before you go hands-on with these phones?
There are a few things that I was not really expecting to be excited about. You know, when we saw these phones, it's like, it's an iteration. We've talked about it before, but like, they look fine. If you're getting an iPhone 13, I think I'm gonna be happy, but like, nothing super exciting about it. But there were some things that got me personally more excited, particularly on the pros. The camera system seems to have been getting a lot of love and a lot of praise. And that's my favorite thing about the iPhone in general. It's the main reason why I use an iPhone, or at least carry an iPhone with me, even if I'm using a different phone. It's because of that camera system. I love the way it takes photos. I love just how it works. And maybe it's just because I'm used to it, but I don't think so. Every time I use other Android phones that have really good cameras, I'm just not as impressed, because they feel more digital to me than they do like photos. I just like personal preference. I like the way the iPhone does it. But the updates to the iPhone Pro, the 13 Pros, seem to be pretty big, especially in low light. I was surprised how big the low light differences were in the real world tests. So that's getting me excited, especially when it comes to video and the main sensor. It seems like it's actually a really big update. And again, I've said this every single episode, but my favorite thing is that you get all those features in the regular size Pro, not just in the Max. Thank you, Apple. Thank you. Then the other thing, though, kind of sticking with the camera, is I'm actually kind of impressed how good cinematic mode is. As long as you're in like decent light, and I'm impressed. If you're in decent light and you have like an actual subject, it actually does a decent job for a first iteration. It's definitely first iteration, but I was expecting way worse.
I just don't like the look of the artificial bokeh. And I think that Apple, to me, it always just comes off a little too aggressive. And the samples that I have seen, I mean, it's okay. It's kind of cool to see. I've seen definitely some examples have been much better than others. Especially I think what impresses me more is the sort of rack focus. That has been good, but sort of just in general, like the bokeh blurred background effect on subjects, to me just looks a little too artificial for my liking. I'm not super impressed, and especially in low light, as we've now learned, it is basically
in low light it falls apart. yeah. I will say, like, this is a feature I will never use outside of testing it for video. Like, there's no chance I'm using this feature.
Nope.
But I was expecting it to like just be horrible. It's not horrible. It's a good first attempt. It's like, the way I compare it is like when we first got portrait mode on the iPhone 7 Plus. I think that's where we first got
yeah, mode. I think so.
I think it was a 6. Yeah. I think that's what it was. It was not great. I mean, it was fine, but it was very much of the same issues here, where the definition of the subject and the cutout was very blurry and fuzzy. The fact that they're doing this with video is a good first attempt. But again, I'm never going to use it. It's like, and here's another question: who is going to use this? Like, the blur is one thing. The rack focus, I don't know who is going to use rack focusing. The blur, I can kind of understand, because it's like, yeah. The only thing I can think is like TikTok. Like, this is a perfect TikTok camera. But other than that, like,
social media videos, maybe if you're a student or an enthusiast who's looking to sort of give a more cinematic experience but use your phone, that makes sense. But I don't see professionals using this when they could use a real deal camera. And I think for me, as we're both kind of in this, sort of pro video world for our jobs, the iPhone is a fantastic video tool. And what I love most about it is that it is super easy and super simple to shoot great 4K video. I shot an entire integration on the Apple Circle from my phone in 4K 60, and it looked great. And a little color tweaking, and it looks great. And I love that the iPhone has that capability, but it's like these extra effects like cinematic mode, and I'd never use it like you. It's not only is it just, capped at 1080p 30, but it's like one of those cool things that the iPhone has, but is it really something that anybody wants? I think of like Slofies, for example. Remember that whole thing? You could take these slow-mo selfies. It's just like, it's one of those things that Apple puts on there, and it's like a little marketing thing that they like, but I'd love to see the numbers on who's really using it.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. For $1,000, what camera can you get? And every single camera on this list, they're kind of old. So you get, well, this is probably an old article, but oh no, this is pretty new actually. It's from May. So these cameras are actually pretty old. Sony a6000, Rebel T6i. They have some handy cams on here. They have some Canon cameras on here. They got some Nikon cameras on here. The PowerShot G7X from Canon. Every single one of those cameras is going to give you a better result than the iPhone. So it's like, if you're really trying to make videos, I get the fact that like it's built into your phone that you're already using. So it's like, there you go. You don't have to buy an extra thing. So it's like good for the first month. But after that, like, you're going to want to keep going. But at the same time, like, I say that, but at the same time, I'm also glad that the features are there, because it kind of democratizes the thought of it, at least. Like, maybe there's someone who didn't know that they want to shoot videos, and they try this feature and like, whoa, this is really cool, and then they want to get into it. I think that's much more where this is going to be useful. It's getting people into it, not for people who are actually trying to create stuff.
And to be fair to Apple too, the Wall Street Journal posted a video where they used this effect to shoot a low light and like daylight music video, and they compared it directly to Samsung's offering, and that was total garbage and didn't even work. So Apple's was better than that. Other companies are doing this, and Apple has a good implementation. I agree with you on the cameras. I'd like to see more side-by-sides between the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro. And kind of my initial thesis going into kind of our first times with these phones is the improvements are there, but they're not drastic between the 12 and the 13. I think if you have an 11 Pro and you're going to a 13 Pro, that's where you'll see the differences.
Yeah,
but correct me if I'm wrong, but did you notice any difference between if someone's, okay, I'm going to buy I have a 12 Pro, should I go to the 13 Pro? Is there enough with the camera to make it a justifiable purchase?
Probably not for most people, especially. I think the biggest difference where you can really see a change is with low light, especially on cameras like the ultra wide, because it now has a wider aperture. And the main camera has a bigger sensor, or bigger pixels at least. So that's the biggest change, but even that is not that big of a difference. And kind of like going back to like the quote unquote real cameras, any of these phones taking a picture in really low light, even with night mode, even with other stuff, they still don't look very good. You're still going to get all the smoothing and the noise reduction and stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's nice that they're making updates, and I'm happy about those. I'm glad that I'm going to be having a camera that is better at those things. But if the camera is the sole reason you're getting the phone, maybe not, or at least maybe wait until they're actually out and you can see the real comparisons. Because like you said, there actually haven't been very many people comparing the 12 Pro to the 13 Pro to see what those differences are. So maybe once those actually come out and we test them ourselves, then maybe that will be worth it. But usually it's like, if there's one feature that you're looking for, unless it's drastic or a feature that didn't exist before, like what would that be? Like, I guess this could be for some people, the 120 hertz. Maybe that's the feature you're waiting for. Like, that's not available on the 12, so it makes sense to get that on the 13. But the incremental improvements aren't necessarily worth it. I don't think, at least.
And to be fair, too, I feel like as tech enthusiasts, we often look at the year-to-year changes. We want to see what's next, and let's compare it to last year. And if you compare the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 13, especially the base models, there really is not a substantial difference. And I think the only people who are really making those comparisons are those in the tech space or those who are enthusiasts looking to justify an upgrade from the 12 to the 13, or 12 Pro rather to the 13 Pro more specifically. And I think that this year especially, this is where context is needed. I was just with some family members over the weekend, and they were asking about the iPhone 13. And I did a quick survey around the room of the iPhones that they had. There was a 5S, some 6S Pluses, a 10. My sister has a 10. My parents have a 10S Max. And I feel like that is a small sample size, but much more accurate of the current smartphone market. And these are the people who, for the next 12 months are going to want a new iPhone. They're going to walk into the Apple Store. They're going to want to see the new iPhone and get, the latest. And that's where the iPhone 13 makes so much sense. Even though it's not drastically different from the 12, it's still going to provide a whole lot of value for them. So I feel like anybody with like an 11, a 10R, that's where this phone makes so much sense. And I also think, what was my final point on this I was going to make? And I'm forgetting it. I'm losing it. I'm going to have to come back to it. I forgot what I was going to say. Something about the 12 and the 13. I lost it. So when I remember it, I will chime back in.
12 and the 13 being the same?
Oh, no. Okay, here we go. My follow-up to this was not only is the move from the 12 to the 13 very small, but generally speaking, the year-over-year updates from the iPhone are all pretty small. If you look at like the 11 Pro versus the 12 Pro or the 10 versus the 10S, they're all relatively small. The only big change I can think of that if you had the phone 12 months ago that you'd want to upgrade would be from the 7 to the 10. The 10 was so radically different. Change. That's when it made so much sense. But even, from the years before, from the 4S to the 5, the 5S to the 6, there were little changes, but objectively speaking, year over year, not a whole lot of reason to upgrade, but going back 2 generations, 3 generations, that was the case before. I think especially the case this year, that's where it makes so much sense to get one of these new iPhones.
Yeah, totally. That's always something we have to keep in mind, is that Apple's selling phones for everyone, not just people who watch YouTube and are on Twitter. So it's like that sample size is so different. Yeah, like my mom has an 11, my dad has a 10S Max, my sister has a 12 because she keeps breaking phones, so I told her to get on the upgrade program because it's just going to save her money in the long run. My wife has an 11 Pro, and she's my wife, for crying out loud. I keep trying to convince her, like, get the new phone, and she even just doesn't. Like, she likes technology even. Like, when the new stuff comes out, we watch the keynote together. She's like, oh, that's cool, and stuff. And then at the end of the day, she's like, well, I don't want to spend the money on it, though. So it's like, her. Yeah, go ahead.
So take that sample size. Who would you recommend of the people you just mentioned, who would benefit from the upgrades from the 13? Who would you recommend and say, hey, the phone you've got, I'd get the 13?
Probably my dad, because he's on the 10S, and my dad is the one who always is taking pictures and videos of everything. Mm-hmm. So... And every time I'm visiting, he always like, give me your phone. I'm like, I mean, you could just get the new phone. Like, you're gainfully employed. You're doing pretty well. Like, you can get the new phone, because he always complains about like the certain things. I'm like, it's like first world issues, but it's just funny. Every time I'm there, he asks for my phone because it takes better photos. And it's not like he's asking me to take the pictures because, I'm a better photographer than him. No, he's asking for the phone itself. So it's like, you could do that. You could do that on your own. So yeah, definitely him. Everyone else though, it's like, if they got the new phone, why? Like, what are they? The only other person I could think is my sister, because she's on the upgrade program, and I'm sure she's like 2 weeks away from breaking the phone that she has now. So it's like, that's really the only thing I could think. I even told my wife, like, do you want the new phone? She's like, no, not really. Because it's just like, it's like, will this phone make a difference in the way that you use the phone? For most people, I don't think so. Yeah. It's just not going to, especially like you said, if you're on one of these 10 series phones with this I would call it new design, but it's not a new design at this point. The 10 has
Modern.
been out for forever. Yeah, there you go. That's a better way to say it. Modern design. If you're on that kind of phone, like if it's working for you, it's working for you, and the updates year over year are not going to be that different.
Yeah, same for me. I think that like my family members, if you have like a 6S Plus, it's time. If you have a 7
definitely.
generation, it's time. My sister has a 10. I told her, like, you know what, like, she uses her phone enough, like, you'd probably notice a difference with the battery life and the processor improvements. For her, she just got an M1 iPad Pro, and she just said that the biggest difference for her was the Face ID speed. That, over time, the Face ID hardware hasn't changed so much, but the Face ID system has gotten faster. She didn't mention anything about the 120 hertz display. She didn't mention anything about processor. It was for her, it's like, oh my gosh, Face ID, it works better and it's faster. So that makes sense for her. And I said, it might be worth it. For my parents, 10S Max, like it still takes really good photos and videos. My parents are much more casual phone enthusiasts. They love their big screens. So they've got, the 6.5-inch display. It's OLED. I mean, it's still a good phone. And for them, I'd say probably not worth the upgrade. And then my wife, I made the risky decision. She had an 8 that was just couldn't make it through the day. The battery life was horrible. She had an 8, it was horrible.
She's been on the 8 forever.
It was bad. So a month ago, I want to say, or a month and a half, I got her a 12, knowing full well that was a horrible time to buy because the 13 was coming. But for me, it wasn't worth it to wait the extra month and a half and have her have to deal with that phone for the very minor improvements. And now looking back, I'm glad I did because the 13 has nothing compared to the 12. A little bit of a bigger battery life, bigger battery for better battery life, processor, maybe some slight differences to the camera, but she has now had that 12 for like a month and a half and she's been very happy. So it really just kind of depends. Like you said, it's really about your usage and how much you use certain parts of the phone. And if you've got a modern iPhone that is still holding up really well, unless there's something specific, I don't think there's a huge reason to jump to the 13. There is nothing about that series of phone coming from someone who loves Apple that thinks it's like, oh my gosh, you've got to have this. Like, again, the iPhone 10, new design, Face ID, OLED display. That was like, oh man, you got to have this. This is the coolest thing ever. 13, it's better, it's refined, but nothing screams, you got to have this phone.
So that kind of leads to the question I have. Because, if you look online on Twitter, which is not real life, but
the echo chamber,
everyone is saying, everyone is kind of saying the same thing. Like, this is a boring update. Apple didn't do much for this. My question every time people say that is, okay, what do you want to see then? What is the features that you want? And honestly, I don't know. I'd like a different design, sure, but like, is that really going to do anything for how I use my phone? No. What is something that you would like to see?
This is a great point. I mean, there are things that I'd love to see on the iPhone 13 Pro that I wish they did. I wish that they did the always on display, and I wish that there were some other things that came true, but by the time this video or this podcast rather goes live, the video for the Apple Circle for iPhone launch day is, I'm not sure what we're going to title it, but my thesis is sort of like the truth about the iPhone 13. And as I was sort of writing that script and putting the pieces together, I kind of had this argument in mind about the echo chamber, about no one thinks it's a big update and it's small and this and that. And I think that the conversation we just had about iPhone longevity and the context of who's buying the phone, that's a huge piece to the puzzle. And as we were kind of talking about before we started the podcast, I think there are many people out there who are so quick to say, well, Android has this feature and that feature. My phone has a space zoom. My phone has an always on display, and Apple doesn't have that. And I will say that's a valid point. Yes, the iPhone 13 Pro does not have features that Android phones have. And if you want the cutting edge, latest and greatest phone, like you want the most modern smartphone of 2021, as much as I love Apple and the iPhone, I don't think the 13 Pro is objectively the most cutting edge, bleeding edge phone you could buy. That's probably like a fold or a flip from Samsung. There are other Android phones that give you a much more unique experience. But that's just not the point of the 13. The buyer of the 13, the main buyer, is someone who's coming from one of these older phones that they're not looking at the year-over-year upgrades. They're looking at the upgrade from the phone they've got now, which is probably 3, 4, 5 generations old. And it's so easy to look at the 12 versus the 13 and be, oh, look, there's very minor upgrades. This is a garbage update. That's not the case for most people, and I think that's why we get so caught up with thinking the 13 sucks and it's a horrible phone. I think the truth is Is it the most cutting edge phone that Apple has ever made, or is it the best Apple could have done? Probably not. There are other Android phones that are flashier, but is it the worst phone ever and not worthy of your money and just a cash grab experience from Apple? No, because it still offers a lot of value and has enough in there to make it a great phone for millions around the world. There's my rant synopsis of that video. And what are your thoughts on that, Matt? Do you agree, disagree?
No, I completely agree. I think where the well, what's the right word for this? Not the hate, but the kind of frustration with Apple. I think where that comes from is that people want the iPhone. It's not like they want all the different phones, because they obviously know like the Samsung Fold exists, or the Z Flip, which is the same price as the 13 Pro. So they know those exist, but they don't want those phones. They want an iPhone. They just want Apple to do those kind of cool things with the iPhone. And I totally understand that, because like I said, I love the camera system. It's the main reason I use the iPhone, even though technically specs wise, like the Samsung S21 Ultra has much better specs with the camera. I don't care, because I like the photos that come off the iPhone. And then extend that to the software. iMessage, I know it's the old trope, but I've tried to get off of it. It just doesn't, it's not working. Okay. My family is not getting off iMessage. I'm not going to Facebook Messenger. I can tell you that. WhatsApp, I hate. Telegram, we use it for work, but I would never use it on my own. iMessage is just where all the people I know are at. My wife is not going to switch to an Android phone full time. She tries them out every once in a while because I have them laying around, but she's not going to switch to that. Those kind of things. And then just the general software experience of different apps. You get an update for Instagram, for instance, and it comes to the iPhone first. Like all those kind of little things that really go into having an iPhone. I think that's why people are frustrated. They want that experience, but they also want the cool folding phone, or they want the crazy space zoom. So I totally get why. At least that's my theory. At least, so if that is true, I totally get why people would be frustrated. And at times, I wish there was cool things. Like I pick up the Galaxy Fold 2 or 3 at this point, and man, it's a cool phone. It is just fun to use. I wish it was running iOS, because Samsung software, I just don't like it. Mm-hmm. So it's like I totally get it, but it is what it is. There's really no solution to it. You kind of have to deal with it.
We will have our full thoughts on these phones, by the way, next week. Next Apple Circle podcast, next Friday, we will have these phones for a couple of days. We will give sort of our full thoughts on everything. I'm very excited to try it out. Matt, you were a fan, and I think you pre-ordered an iPad mini. Embargoes on those just dropped. What are your thoughts, initial impressions on this new small iPad?
So I actually did not pre-order an iPad mini. I was going to, and then I believe when I went in, because the pre-orders dropped the day of the event, right?
Right.
So I wasn't very early on it because we were doing other stuff. So when I went in, I think it had slipped to like October at some point, and I was like, you know what? I bet I could walk into the Apple Store on that day and buy one. Or at least 2 days later. Maybe not the day of the iPhone launch, but a few days later, I bet I could walk in and buy one. So I'm just holding out hope for that. that's my, but I will, let's put it this way. I will be getting one to test out. Will I keep it? I don't know. But the initial impressions are exactly what I was expecting. It's an iPad mini. Basically take the iPad Air, shrink it down to this 8.3 inch size, and there you go. That's exactly what the experience you're getting. I do like that it's having all the same software. It's having basically the same features. I like that it has USB-C, because in the iPad world, I've completely converted all my accessories to USB-C. So, there's nothing surprising about this iPad mini. What about you? I don't think you're getting one, right? Or maybe we're getting one to test, but not personally.
I think Marquez said it best for him, and I agree with him. It's like, it's really cool, but he doesn't see a use case for it in his workflow, and I'd say that same thing. And I think a couple other reviewers mentioned the same thing. It's like, if you have an iPad Pro, unless you need the smaller form factor, you're not really gaining anything. You're really more losing things, because it doesn't have ProMotion and some of the other things, and Face ID and stuff like that. I think it's cool. I would love to kind of go hands-on and try it for a little bit, but for me, the iPad Pro makes so much sense. And like I mentioned, when I use my iPad Pro, I always have it attached to the Magic Keyboard, and I just love this thing. I use it like a laptop. I probably should just buy a laptop, but I love the versatility of this. So I think that for me, of course, there will be third-party keyboards out there for the iPad mini, I'm sure. I think the 11-inch for me is like the sweet spot. It's a good screen size. I like the screen technology. I have even the older one too. This was the one with the A12Zs, but it's still fast. It's powerful, great battery life, and I do not want to give up my Magic Keyboard. So for me, I just don't have a need to go with the smaller one. I have had an iPad mini in the past. I used to use it as a little control surface thing, and then I think I sold it. Oh, when I got my iPad Pro, I traded it in for like $50 or whatever to Apple, and I just got rid of it. So just to me, I'd rather have the bigger display. Looks cool, but no need for me in my current setup of Apple devices.
Yeah, what it really comes down to with the iPad mini is you have to have a reason to need it. Because like you said, I actually think objectively, if you want an iPad, just like an iPad, get any of the bigger iPads because they're a better experience overall. But you have to have a reason to want the smaller iPad. For me, I've said this many times, but we're going to use it as navigation in the car because we use certain apps for that really only work in that certain way. And right now we're using the 11-inch iPad Pro, which is fine, but mounting that into the dash is it's big. It barely fits. So having a little smaller thing there is going to be great. Also for when I fly my drone, which I'm assuming is going to work. I haven't actually tested it. I haven't seen anyone else test it either, but I've seen other people use regular or older iPad minis and that works. So I'm assuming it's going to work with the new one. Also, my wife has the, this new one is the 6th generation, right? So I believe she has the 4th generation iPad mini. It's so hard because they all look exactly the same. They only change the insides. But yeah, she has that and she doesn't use it all that often, but she does use it as an e-reader. Because like when we go on trips or something like that, she'll take it. The only problem with it is pretty slow and it's a little janky. So I'll probably do what you did with your old iPad mini. I'll trade that in, try to get this new iPad mini, and it'll just be that device that we have for those very certain occasions. The other thing that we talked about though is it worth that money? Because like I said, I think objectively the bigger iPads are actually a better value. They're more worth it for the iPad experience, and you can get for $329 the base iPad, which has a bigger screen. It doesn't have any of the flashy features or flashy design, but it's a bigger screen and it's much cheaper. And then for the spec that I want of the iPad mini, it's $799. That's 256 gigabytes of storage, and I want the 5G because I want the not because of 5G. I don't care about that at all, but the something that Apple is still doing, which is kind of confusing to me, is that only the cellular models have GPS built in, which is strange, but I don't know why they haven't changed that. It must just be part of the chip or something. I want that GPS, so the base model that would work for me is $799. For that price, you can get to the 11-inch iPad Pro. So it's like, is it worth it? I don't know. It really just depends how much you want to use an iPad for those specific scenarios. And I think we kind of talked about this last week. I think for most people, the answer is absolutely not. I don't think this iPad is going to sell well at all. I think I don't even know why they did it, to be honest. I think maybe just some people at Apple wanted their own. So they're just like, let's just make it.
It's funny because as much as like the echo chamber on Twitter complains about things with the iPhone, and you have the exact same people who will criticize the iPhone for its maybe lack of capabilities and upgrades. These are the people who will praise the iPad mini. I've seen very glowing, positive reviews about the iPad mini, and I feel like this is a device really made for the tech enthusiasts, because what normal person would go into the Apple store and spend $500 when they could save $150, go with an iPad that has a bigger screen, that looks and functions basically the same? You're definitely paying a premium here for the size, and you're paying a premium for that new design. And I think that it's a very particular use case and a particular subset of customers who is going to want the iPad mini. Because for most people, I just would recommend the base iPad. For $330, it does everything you'd want to do. It's got the newer chip. It's got better cameras. It's got Touch ID, which isn't as convenient and great. It's got an older design, but it still is going to be a great iPad. I don't think the iPad mini is going to sell well at all either. And maybe this is just sort of the last hurrah for the iPad mini. Maybe it wasn't too complex to sort of scale down the iPad Air. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last iteration we see, or at least the last design change. We get another maybe generation or two, and then it sunsets out. Or they what about this? Do you think that they would eventually discontinue the regular $330 iPad and then eventually just bring the price down of older generations to match? So you'd have maybe an older iPad mini that starts at $399 and then goes up. That would make more sense because that's much more in their design DNA, and also sort of is a win-win to get rid of that old design. But I just don't think that the iPad mini, as it sits in the lineup, is a super compelling offering for most people.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to do that, though, because they had the old, well, I guess it technically wasn't old. It had a processor bump in a few years ago. But the old iPad mini, they had that around, and it was more expensive than the base iPad. So clearly, at least I think, clearly in Apple's mind, this is a different product that is not worthy of being the quote-unquote cheap iPad. And I kind of agree. Like, if I'm looking for an iPad, the iPad mini is something different. Like, if I want an iPad, I'm looking for a big screen. So I don't know what the goal here is. I will say, though, the reason I think it's not going to sell well is because we just have to look at the original iPad mini. That was something everyone was clamoring for. It came out, and I think it did relatively well at first, but quickly, I mean, it just took a nosedive. People stopped buying them. And I think the reason for that is phones started getting bigger and bigger. Well, that hasn't changed. Phones are still getting bigger and bigger. Why carry a tablet and a phone when I can carry a 6.1-inch phone in my pocket that does pretty much everything I need it to? And if I do want that tablet experience, well, then I'm spending very similar money for an 11-inch iPad Air or Pro. Or, yeah, Air 2, actually. I totally forgot the iPad Air exists. What I see happening is they eventually get rid of the base iPad. The iPad Air becomes the cheap one. Whether or not they continue the iPad Air name as the cheap one, or if they just make that the iPad and then maybe they redesign the iPad Air in some way, I think that will be there. So then they have the uniformity across the line of the design, and then that's it. The question, yeah, I don't know if they're going to update the iPad mini ever again, though. That's such especially. Let's throw one more thing in there. We have all these rumors that by 2023, there's going to be a folding iPhone. If there's a folding iPhone, then there's no reason for an iPad mini.
Bad news. I think that got pushed to 2024. I think, according to Michi Corley this week.
But
I think
you get what I'm saying, though.
That's a great point, too. First off, I think that Apple needs to just drop the Air moniker because it's so confusing to people. They really just need iPad, iPad mini, and iPad Pro. Keep it like the phones. Keep it simple, to the point. I feel like it is a little confusing to say, oh, you need the iPad Air, iPad. It can be a little much for some people. And I think that there is an argument that people would say, well, instead of spending the money on a 13 Pro Max, I could buy a 13 mini and then an iPad mini. And yeah, you can do that, but I'm sure people will do that, but that is not what the vast majority of people are thinking. That's exactly what you said. There were people clamoring for this iPad mini. They wanted the small iPad, and then they got it, and Apple did it. And then, maybe this is more for the enthusiasts and not for most people. That's what's just so tough in this industry, and something that Apple has the benefit of looking at the numbers of how they actually sell is you think that people want one thing, but really it's just the people in your Twitter feed that are saying it over and over again. That's not what the average person wants. And I think that's a great case for the iPhone 13 and also the same case for the iPad mini. Not knocking the iPad mini. I'm glad Apple decided to give it a redesign, but I don't think it has a super bright future just because of its price and because it's just appealing to a more limited customer base.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's confusing, but at the same time, I'm kind of happy because I am one of those enthusiasts. So I'm happy to get my hands on it, and we will report back all of our thoughts about. Well, are you getting an iPad mini? Are you going to be able to play with one? I know you're not buying one personally, but
I don't know. There was some back end spreadsheet stuff that I saw this morning that maybe I'm not sure where the iPad mini is going now. So either next week I will have a report for you to show you what it's like, or I will not have one, and we will just speculate. So. Stay tuned to next week to see what happens with the iPad mini. We'll have phones, of course. I'm not sure what the situation is with the iPad mini just yet.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll be able to talk about it at least a little bit. And I think when we get into the Apple, well, you're going to pick up the iPhones, right? So
yes,
when we go get in the Apple Store, I'm going to try to sneak in. Hopefully, they have the iPad minis on display there. If I can't get one immediately, at least get in my hands, try it out. But who knows? You never know these days with the Apple Store. They seem to change everything every 5 seconds. So who knows?
Just out of curiosity, how was your pre-order process this year? What worked for you, and how'd you get in, and how was that?
Oh, it was easy. I did have some issues, which apparently other people were having, but for the most part, I went in. I had my pre-filled out pre-order thing that they let you do in the app, which great. They need to do that every time. That was really helpful. I also a few days before went through and I'm on the upgrade program, so I made sure everything was up to date there. I got approved for the new loan and everything like that. And yeah, I just on the day I just clicked on it, tapped. I was paying with my debit card through Apple Pay, so it worked fine. Now I went back and bought what did I buy? A regular 13, and then I went back and bought a 13 Pro Max as well. I'm not keeping all these phones, everyone. These are just for videos and stuff. The 13 Pro, man, I'm trying. When you buy this many phones, it's so confusing what happens, especially at 5 a.m. I went through one of them. It was fine. And then when I went to buy the 13 Pro Max, I was using my Apple Card. And that's where I had some issues. It just wouldn't go through. It kept failing and canceling. I just kept trying and eventually it worked. Although I know our producer, Ralph, had the same issue and he gave up. And I forgot what he did, but he eventually got an iPhone. But yeah, there were some issues. But for the most part, it was one of the smoothest years we've had. What about you?
I feel like I was really lucky because I also paid with the Apple Card for like 4 phones and had no issues. Actually, I was surprised. Speaking of last week's episode in our pre-order tips, I had time.gov open, and when 5 a.m. Pacific rolled around, I want to say that within the first 20 seconds, I actually had the best of luck on the iPad. The iPad OS Apple Store app launched right away, and I flew through 3 pre-orders really quickly. I went through, all the information was filled out. They kind of make it a little confusing. You have to go in and then select a store, then you have to select a pickup time, and they make it multiple taps.
And if you're in there and the time gets taken, then it doesn't let you do it again. You just have to restart. Kind of, it's kind of annoying, but yeah, continue.
It was super simple, and I was able to get, I think, 3 phones for an 8 a.m. pickup. I mean, I kind of felt bad. We hadn't had our work chat going in the background, and I think I had ordered personal phone and then 2 company phones, and I was like, hey, got in, got the orders, and everybody else was still out. So I was just the luck of the draw this time. And then when I went back for the last phone, I think that was when I got kicked to 8:45. But really, all things considered, that pre-order process was super nice. Everything was, already kind of filled out. And luckily for me, I paid with my Apple Card. Well, I did half the transactions. Well, I did 1 transaction with the Apple Card. I ordered 1 phone on accident with the Apple Card. And then I did a couple others on our business card, and everything worked with Apple Pay really well. So seems like there was a bad combination of Apple Card issues and then Apple Card and upgrade plan issues. So hopefully if you were plagued by those, things got straightened out. But there have been much worse years, all things considered. So
definitely.
I'd consider it a win.
Yeah. No, it was pretty smooth. Now, just the other thing that Apple's always very good at is if you got a pre-order and you have a pickup time, you will have a phone.
Yes.
They've never gone wrong there. Even when that one year, I think it was the iPhone 10, maybe it was the 10s, there was a hurricane on the East Coast, and that screwed everything up. Mm-hmm. But we still got our phones as promised on the day, even though FedEx and UPS were having all kinds of issues. So they've got that down. If you got a pre-order, you're good. Show up at the Apple Store, you're going to get a phone.
Yeah, I do appreciate not having to worry about UPS or FedEx or any of the logistics. It's just, okay, I know that my pre-order went through, I've got a reservation number, and I can just walk in and get the store to the store and get the phone. And that's always easy. And you just walk in, show them your ID, they get you the phone. I'm going to try to trade this one in, so hopefully they can just do that there. And it should be a very easy Friday morning, all things considered. Get there 15 minutes early, get in line, because you do have to get in line and then queue up by your time, and it should be pretty smooth. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too. I'm interested. For me, this is my first year going to the Utah Apple Store because I've always been in Southern California, and Southern California is packed. There's so many people there. Granted, there's only 2 Apple stores within vicinity here, so everyone is going to be going to those. But it's going to be interesting to see if it's any different or if it's exactly the same. I have a feeling it's going to be exactly the same, but at least there's something different for me this year. It's going to be a new experience.
Yeah, I'm always curious. I mean, when I've gone, it has always been sort of a madhouse. Like there's a ton of people there, and we've even like gone as a company. We've picked up our phones, and then like I remember one year we like went to lunch at the mall by the Apple Store.
Yeah, we
and
went
you
back,
walk
yeah.
by, and it is just packed during the day. Then you have a ton of people who are like wondering, "Oh, what's going on? Oh, there's a new iPhone. Oh, I want to buy one
I
right
know.
now." And it's like, okay, you can stand on the standby line and
Can't-
wait, but
Yeah.
it is a madhouse. So if you don't have to go to the Apple Store on Friday, I would avoid it. But if you do have a reservation, just get there within your window. Apple makes it pretty smooth to check in, and you are good. If you have a pre-order, you've got your phone there and you are good to go. If you don't have a pre-order, show up, stand on the standby line. Typically, they've got a couple of models reserved for those who are just looking to get something on launch day.
Yeah, kind of the tips we talked about last time. If you didn't get a phone, you'll probably be able to get something. It's just not going to be the color or the size storage that you want, but you'll be able to get something.
Yeah.
Or otherwise, you're going to have to wait until like October or November at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much everything. We've gone, I'm surprised we stretched that as long as we did, but there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And even next week's going to be even better. We're going to have our hands on with these products. We're going to be like almost half a week in. I'm excited. I'm excited to get these phones.
Yes, I am very excited as well. And also for you guys who are picking up iPhone 13s, iPad mini, we want to hear from you guys. I'd love to kind of do a little roundup and hear different thoughts from you guys, our listeners and viewers, on your thoughts on these new phones. So if you're going to get one, or if you didn't get one, I want to know why and what phone you have right now. Let us know. You can text us or call the Apple Circle hotline, 949-354-3508. We can kind of discuss all things iPhone 13 next week. And Matt, good luck on Friday. I am very excited to hear your thoughts, and we'll be back here, same time, same place, right back here next week for another episode of the Apple Circle Podcast.